Commander Quan was drinking his morning coffee when the alarm bells started ringing throughout the space station. He nearly dropped his cup as the red lights flashed across the control room. His officers ran to their stations, checking screens and pressing buttons with quick movements. "What is happening?" Quan asked, walking fast to the main control panel. Lieutenant Yuna looked up from her screen with wide eyes. "Sir, we have something big on our sensors, really big." Quan looked at the main display screen. There was a dot that should not be there. In the empty space near the edge of their star system, something had appeared. The sensors showed it was huge, bigger than their largest warships. "When did it show up?" Quan asked. "Just now, sir." One moment there was nothing, and then it was there. No warning, no energy readings before it appeared. This was impossible. Nothing could just appear in space like that. Every ship in the galaxy used warp drives that created energy waves. Their sensors could detect those waves from very far away. But this thing had no energy signature at all before it appeared. "Run a full scan," Quan ordered. "I want to know everything about that ship." The scanning took several minutes. When the results came in, Quan felt his blood turn cold. The ship was over 2 kilometers long. It had a strange shape, all sharp angles and flat surfaces. It looked like it was built for war. The metal hull was dark gray, almost black. Strange energy readings came from different parts of the ship. "Sir," Yuna said in a quiet voice, "the computer says this ship design is not in our database." "We have never seen anything like it." Quan stared at the screen. In 300 years, the Krellian Empire had met many alien races. They had files on every ship design in the galaxy. But this was completely new. "Try to contact them," Quan said. "Use all frequencies." They sent messages in every language they knew. Common trade language, old diplomatic codes, even simple math patterns. The strange ship did not answer. It just sat there in space, silent as a rock. Hours passed. The ship did not move. It did not send any signals. But their sensors showed that its power systems were active. Something was alive inside that dark hull dot, finally. Quan sent an urgent message to the Imperial fleet. Admiral Hannah needed to know about this right away. "Admiral." Hannah received the message while she was on her flagship, the Eternal Dominion. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. For 30 years, she had protected the Empire from pirates and rebels. She had never lost a battle. When she read Quan's report, her face became serious. She called her best officers to the meeting room. "Look at these readings," she said, showing them the scan results. "This ship is huge. Its weapon systems are completely unknown, and it appeared without any warning. Captain Tejo, her second in command, studied the images. Maybe it is a new rebel ship. Some group trying to scare us? No rebel group has technology." "Like this," Hannah said. "Look at these energy readings. This ship has power levels higher than our best dreadnoughts." The officers talked quietly among themselves. They had all heard stories about lost alien civilizations with advanced technology, but those were just stories. "There is something else," Hannah said. She pressed a button and new information appeared on the screen. Our computer analyzed the ship's basic design. It found some similarities to old records. Everyone leaned forward to look. "The computer thinks this might be a human ship." The room became very quiet. Captain Tejo laughed nervously. "That cannot be right. Humans are primitive. They live on one small planet and have never left their star system." Hannah nodded slowly. "That is what our records say. We discovered humans 40 years ago. They had just learned to fly simple spaceships. No advanced weapons, no warp drives. We decided they were too primitive to bother with." "So how could they build something like this?" Another officer asked. "I do not know," Hannah said. "But I plan to find out." Meanwhile, on the mysterious ship, Captain Sung stood on the bridge. He was a man in his 50s with calm eyes and steady hands. Around him, his crew worked at strange control panels that glowed with blue light. "Admiral," his communications officer said, "the Empire is trying to contact us. Many different frequencies and languages." Sung smiled slightly. "Let them wait." Are our systems ready? All weapons online, reported his weapons officer. Shields at full power. Cloak is stable. Good, Sung said. He looked at the main screen, which showed the Imperial space station far away. They think we are just one ship. Let them keep thinking that for now. His science officer, a young woman named Minji, looked up from her station. Captain, their scans cannot penetrate our hull. They have no idea what we really are, Sung nodded. The humans had learned much in 40 years. While the Empire thought they were still using simple rockets, humanity had been busy. They had found old alien technology on dead worlds. They had learned to build things the Empire could not imagine. Sir, the communications officer said, we are getting a new signal. This one is different. It is coming from a big Imperial warship. Admiral Hannah, Sung said quietly. I have been waiting to meet her. He had studied all the Empire's military leaders. Hannah was smart and dangerous. She had conquered 12-star systems for the Empire, but she had also made one big mistake. She had ignored humanity. Should we answer her? The communications officer asked. Not yet, Sung said. First, let us see what they send to greet us. On her flagship, Admiral Hannah was preparing a fleet. She did not want to start a war, but she needed to be ready for anything. If this was really a human ship, she wanted to know how they had gotten so advanced so quickly. Send 3 cruisers and 10 destroyers, she ordered. Tell them to approach. Carefully. Try to open communications, but be ready to fight if needed. The Imperial ships moved toward the strange vessel. They had strong shields and powerful weapons. Their crews were experienced fighters who had won many battles, but as they got closer to the human ship, something strange happened. Their sensors started showing impossible readings. The ship seemed to be changing, shifting in ways that made no sense. Captain Day commanded the lead cruiser. He was a brave man who had served the Empire for 20 years, but as he looked at his scanner readings, he felt fear for the first time in his military career. Sir, his sensor officer said with a shaking voice, that ship ... It is not following the laws of physics. On the human ship, Captain Sung watched the Imperial vessels approach. They are being careful, he said. Good, Hannah is as smart as our intelligence report said. Orders, sir. Asta's weapons officer Sung was quiet for a moment. 40 years ago, the Empire had looked at humanity and decided they were not worth conquering. They were wrong. Humanity had been preparing for this day ever since. Power up all systems, Sung said. It is time to show them what humans can do. The retribution began to glow with energy that made space itself bend around it. Captain Day felt sweat on his forehead as his cruiser moved closer to the human ship. His 3 cruisers and 10 destroyers were the pride of the Imperial fleet. They had won battles against pirates and rebels across the galaxy, but something felt different this time. Keep scanning that ship, Day ordered. I want to know what weapons it has. His sensor officer worked hard at his controls. Sir, I cannot get clear readings. Something is blocking our scans, but I can see energy building up in several places on their hull. Day nodded. The human ship was getting ready to fight. Good, he would show these primitive humans the power of the Empire. All ships, form attack pattern 7, Day said into his communicator. Charge weapons and raise shields. The Imperial ships moved into position. It was a formation they had used many times before. The cruisers would attack from different angles while the destroyers provided cover fire. No enemy had ever survived this attack. On the Retribution, Captain Sung watched the Imperial ships take their positions. His tactical officer showed him a display of their movements. Classic Imperial formation, the officer said. They will try to surround us and attack from 3 sides. Sung almost smiled. They are using tactics from their training books. Have they learned nothing new in 300 years? Should we try to communicate with them first? Asked his communications officer. No, Sung said. They came here with weapons charged and shields up. They want to fight. We will give them a fight they will never forget. Admiral Hannah watched the battle preparations from her flagship, which was still far away, she felt worried. Something about this situation was wrong, but she could not figure out what it was. "Send a message to Captain Day," she ordered. "Tell him to be very careful. That ship is not like anything we have seen before," but it was too late. Captain Day had already given the order to attack. "All ships fire." Day shouted. 12 Imperial warships opened fire at the same time. Bright beams of plasma energy shot through space toward the human vessel. These weapons could destroy entire cities. They had never failed to break through enemy shields. The plasma beams hit the human ship and simply disappeared. "What?" Day stared at his screen in shock. Direct hits but no damage. His weapons officer checked his instruments twice. "Sir, our sensors show the energy just ... went away like it was absorbed or redirected somewhere else." On the Retribution, Sung watched the Imperial attack with calm eyes. "Their weapons are exactly what our intelligence predicted. Standard plasma cannons, basic energy shields. They have not improved their technology in decades. Shall we return?" "Fire, sir?" asked his weapons officer. "Yes, show them what real weapons can do, but do not destroy them all at once. I want Admiral Hannah to see what happens when you challenge humanity." The human ship's weapons came online, but these were not like any weapons the Empire had ever seen. Instead of plasma beams or missiles, the Retribution fired something completely different. Streams of particles moving at nearly the speed of light shot out from the human ship. These particles passed right through the Imperial shields like they were not there. When they hit the enemy ship's hulls, the metal began to break down at the atomic level. Captain Day watched in horror as his strongest cruiser simply fell apart. The hull did not explode or burn. It just stopped being solid and drifted away like dust. "All ships, retreat." Day screamed into his communicator, but it was too late. The human ship fired again. This time, beams of pure energy that bent space itself struck the Imperial destroyers. The ships were crushed by gravity waves that appeared from nowhere. Metal hulls crumpled like paper balls. "This is impossible," Day's science officer shouted. "They are using weapons that should not exist." The Retribution moved through space in ways that made no sense. It did not use rockets or engines that the Imperial sensors could detect. Instead, it seemed to push space itself aside and slide through. The gaps within 10 minutes, half the Imperial attack force was gone. The remaining ships tried to run, but the human vessel was faster than anything they had ever seen. Captain Day found himself alone as his last escort ship was torn apart by weapons that worked like magic. His cruiser's shields were failing, and his weapons could not even scratch the enemy. "Unknown vessel," Day said over the radio. "We surrender. Please stop your attack." The human ship paused. Then, for the first time, it answered. "This is Captain Sung of the UES Retribution," came a calm voice. "Captain Day, you attacked us without warning or provocation. Why should we accept your surrender?" Day was shocked. The voice spoke perfect Imperial language. You know our language? "We know many things about your empire, Captain. We have been watching you for a very long time." "That is impossible. Humans are primitive. You have never left your home system." There was a sound that might have been laughter. "Is that what your records say? How strange." "We have been traveling among the stars for 40 years, Captain. We have visited many worlds that your empire conquered. We have seen what you do to other species." Day felt cold fear in his stomach. If the humans had been watching the empire in secret, they would know about the slave worlds, the destroyed civilizations, the billions of dead aliens. "We were just following orders," Day said weakly. "Yes," Captain Sung said. "We know about your orders. We know about your Emperor's plans to conquer every world in the galaxy. That is why we are here." The human ship moved closer to Day's cruiser. Up close, it looked even more terrifying. The hull was covered with weapon ports and devices that glowed with strange energy. "Captain Day, you will deliver a message to Admiral Hannah," Sung said. "Tell her that the age of Imperial expansion is over. Tell her that humanity remembers every world you have destroyed, every species you have enslaved. Tell her that we are here to collect the debt your empire owes to the galaxy. You are just one ship, Day said, trying to sound brave. The empire has thousands of warships. We will crush you, one ship? Sung sounded amused. Captain, you have much to learn about human technology, but do not worry. You will learn very soon. The human ship powered up its weapons again. You have 5 minutes to leave this system, Captain. If you are still here after that, I will finish what we started. Day did not need to be told twice. His damaged cruiser limped away from the battle as fast as its broken engines could carry it. Admiral Hannah received Day's report 3 hours later. She read it twice, then called her senior officers to an emergency meeting. 30 ships destroyed, she said to the silent room. 1 ship escaped with heavy damage. The enemy took no casualties and suffered no damage. The officers looked at each other with worried faces. This had never happened before in Imperial history. What kind of weapons did they use? Asked Captain Taiho. According to Captain Day's report, they had particle beams that ignore shields, gravity weapons that crush ships, and some kind of space-bending drive system. That technology does not exist, said the fleet science officer. Our best scientists say such weapons are impossible. Hannah was quiet for a moment. 40 years ago, we found the humans on their little planet. They were just learning to build simple spaceships. We thought they were too primitive to be a threat. She stood up and walked to the window that looked out at the stars. What if we were wrong? What if they were not as primitive as we thought? What if they have been preparing for this day ever since we first visited them? Even so, Captain Taiho said, it is just 1 ship. We can overwhelm it with numbers. Hannah turned back to her officers. Can we? That 1 ship just destroyed 13 of our best vessels without taking any damage. How many ships would we need to stop it? 100? 1,000? She walked back to the table and pressed a button. The image of the human ship appeared on the screen. Send a message to the Emperor, she said. Tell him we have a serious problem. Tell him that the humans are not what we thought they were. And tell him that we may have just started a war with an enemy we do not understand. On the Retribution, Captain Sung watched the last Imperial ship disappear into warp space. His crew had performed perfectly in their first real battle. Sir, his communications officer said, we are receiving messages from the other ships in the fleet. They are asking for orders. Sung smiled. Admiral Hannah thought she was facing 1 human ship. She had no idea that there were dozens more, hidden throughout the galaxy and waiting for his signal. Tell them to maintain position, Sung said. Soon. Admiral Hannah will send a much larger fleet to deal with us. When she does, we will show her the true power of humanity. Emperor Nian sat on his golden throne and read Admiral Hannah's report for the 3rd time. His hands shook with anger as he thought about 13 Imperial warships being destroyed by a single enemy vessel. This cannot be true, he said to his advisors. Humans are weak and primitive. They live on 1 small planet and have never been a threat to anyone. General Wanho, the Emperor's military advisor, stood at attention. Your Majesty, Admiral Hannah has never lied in 30 years of service. If she says the humans destroyed our ships, then it must be true. Then how do you explain it? The Emperor demanded. How can primitives build weapons that our best scientists say are impossible? The room full of advisors was quiet. No one had a good answer. Emperor Nian stood up from his throne. He was a tall man who had ruled the empire for 20 years. In that time, he had conquered 15 star systems and enslaved dozens of alien species. No one had ever dared to challenge his power. I do not care if they have magic weapons, he said loudly. They are still just humans. We will send so many ships that they cannot possibly fight them all. Your Majesty, Admiral Hannah's voice came through the communication system. I strongly advise against that. We do not understand their technology. We should try to negotiate first. Negotiate? The Emperor's face turned red with anger. The Empire does not negotiate with primitives. We conquered this galaxy through strength, not by talking. He turned to General Wanho. Send Battle Fleet Omega, all 200 ships. I want that human vessel destroyed, and I want their home planet burned to ashes. General Wanho looked worried. Sir, Battlefleet Omega is our strongest force. If we lose it, we will not lose it. The Emperor shouted. 200 of our best warships against one enemy vessel? The humans will be crushed. Admiral Hanna tried again. Your Majesty, please reconsider. There is something strange about this situation. The human ship appeared from nowhere with no warning. It uses weapons we have never seen. It destroyed 13 ships without taking any damage. This suggests they have been preparing for war for a long time. I do not want to hear any more excuses, Emperor Neon said. Send the fleet immediately. And Admiral Hanna, if you are too afraid to fight, I will find someone who is not. The communication ended. Admiral Hanna stared at the blank screen and felt a cold fear in her heart. She had served the Empire faithfully for 30 years, but she had never seen the Emperor make such a foolish decision. Captain Taiho entered her private office. Admiral, the orders have been confirmed. Battlefleet Omega is being assembled. We will have 200 ships, including the super dreadnought World Ender. Hanna nodded slowly. The World Ender was the largest warship ever built by the Empire. It was 5 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to destroy entire planets. If that ship could not defeat the humans, nothing could. How long until... The fleet is ready? She asked. 12 hours, Taiho replied. Ships are coming from all over the Empire. Good, that gives us time to study the battle recordings from Captain Day's encounter. Maybe we can learn something about their weapons. On the Retribution, Captain Sung received reports from his spy network throughout Imperial space. The humans had spent 40 years building a secret intelligence system. They knew about the Empire's military movements before the Emperor's own generals did. Sir, his intelligence officer said, Imperial communications confirm that Battlefleet Omega is being assembled. 200 ships led by the super dreadnought World Ender, Sung nodded, right on schedule. The Emperor is responding exactly as we predicted he would. His science officer, Minji, looked up from her station. Captain, are you sure we can handle 200 ships? Even with our advanced technology, those are difficult odds, Sung smiled. Minji, you are still thinking like the Empire thinks. They believe that more ships always win battles. But what if the enemy cannot find your ships to fight them? He pressed a button on his command chair. The main screen showed a tactical display of the local star system. Computer, activate Protocol 7, Sung said. Protocol 7 activated. The ship's artificial intelligence replied. Dimensional phase generators coming online. Holographic projection systems ready. Multi-temporal existence field stable. Around the bridge, the crew worked at their stations with calm efficiency. They had trained for this moment for years. Sir, the tactical officer reported, all systems are ready. We can begin the demonstration whenever you give the order. Not yet, Sung said. First, let Admiral Hanna see what she is really facing. 3 hours later, Battlefleet Omega arrived in the system. It was the most powerful military force ever assembled by the Empire. The ships filled space like a metal cloud, their weapons ready for war. Admiral Hanna stood on the bridge of the world. Ender and looked at the tactical display. The human ship was still there, alone and apparently defenseless. I do not like this, she said to Captain Taiho. Why is it just sitting there? After destroying 30 ships, why did it not run away? Maybe it is broken, Taiho suggested. Maybe the battle damaged it more than we thought. Hanna shook her head. No, this feels like a trap. She opened communications with the entire fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Hanna. The enemy vessel appears to be alone, but do not underestimate it. We have seen what their weapons can do. Maintain maximum alert status and be ready for anything. The fleet moved into attack formation. The world. Ender and 4 other supercruisers formed the center, while smaller ships spread out to surround the human vessel. On the Retribution, Captain Sung watched the Imperial fleet approach. Impressive, he said. 200 ships in perfect formation. The Empire certainly knows how to put on a show. "Orders, sir?" asked his weapons officer. "Begin Protocol 7, Sung ordered. "Let us show them what humans have learned in 40 years of preparation." The retribution began to change. At first, Admiral Hana thought her sensors were malfunctioning. The single human ship seemed to be multiplying, splitting into multiple copies of itself. "What is happening?" she demanded. Her science officer worked frantically at his controls. "Admiral, our sensors show ... This is impossible. There are now 5 identical ships where there was only one before." "Are they using some kind of cloning technology?" "No, ma'am. These appear to be completely real ships, each with full weapons and shields." As the Imperial fleet watched, the 5 human ships became 10, then 20, then 50. Within minutes, the Empire faced not one enemy vessel, but an entire fleet of identical warships. Captain Yoon, commanding one of the supercruisers, contacted Admiral Hana. "Ma'am, our tactical computers cannot track all these ships. They keep appearing and disappearing from our sensors." Hana stared at the display in shock. Where once there had been empty space, there was now a human fleet that matched their own in numbers. "This has to be some kind of trick," she said. "Ships cannot just multiply like that." But her science officer had more bad news. "Admiral, we are detecting energy signatures from all the ships. They all appear to be real and fully operational." Emperor Nian's voice came over the communication system. "Admiral Hana, what is the delay? Destroy that human ship immediately." "Your Majesty," Hana said carefully, "the situation has changed. There are now many human ships, not just one." "What? That is impossible." "I am sending you the sensor readings now, Your Majesty." There was a long silence from the Emperor's end. When he spoke again, his voice was different, less confident. "How many ships?" he asked quietly. "Approximately 100, sir. All identical to the original vessel." Another silence. Then, attack. "Anyway, we still outnumber them 2-1. Admiral Hana knew this was madness, but she had her orders. "All ships, prepare to attack. Target the closest enemy vessels and fire on my command." The human fleet responded by doing something even more impossible. The ships began to phase in and out of existence, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. Some seemed to be in multiple places at the same time. "How are they doing that?" "Captain," Taiho asked in amazement. The science officer looked up from his instruments with frightened eyes. "Sir, according to our sensors, some of those ships exist in several different time streams simultaneously. They are not just moving through space, they are moving through time itself." Admiral Hana felt her confidence crumble. In 30 years of military service, she had never seen anything like this. The Empire's enemies had always been predictable: pirates with stolen ships, rebels with captured weapons, primitive aliens with simple technology. But these humans were something completely different. They had technology that made Imperial science look like stone tools. "Admiral," her communications officer said, "we are receiving a transmission from the human fleet." "Put it on the main screen." Captain Sung's face appeared on the display. He looked calm and confident, like a man who held all the winning cards. "Admiral Hana," he said, "I am Captain Sung of the Human Expeditionary Fleet. You have come here with 200 ships to destroy us." "That was not a wise decision." "We came here to defend the Empire," Hana replied. "You attacked our vessels without provocation." Sung smiled slightly. "Without provocation." "Admiral, your empire has conquered and enslaved half the galaxy." "You have destroyed entire civilizations and turned peaceful worlds into slave colonies. Did you think no one would ever fight back?" "Humans are not capable of this level of technology," Hana said. The battle began with Admiral Hana giving the order that would haunt her for the rest of her life. "All ships, open fire!" 200 Imperial warships unleashed their weapons at the same time. The space between the fleets lit up with thousands of plasma beams, missile trails, and energy blasts. It was enough firepower to destroy a dozen planets. The human ships did not try to dodge. They did not raise shields or take defensive positions. They simply absorbed the entire Imperial attack like it was nothing more than a gentle rain. Direct hits across the entire enemy fleet, reported Captain Taiho. But sensors show no damage to any human vessel. Admiral Hana stared at the display in disbelief. That is impossible. Nothing can absorb that much firepower without taking damage. Her science officer was checking his instruments with shaking hands. Admiral, the energy from our weapons is not being reflected or blocked. It is being converted. Somehow they are turning our attacks into power for their own systems. On the Retribution, Captain Soong watched his energy displays climb higher and higher as the Imperial weapons fed power into his ship's systems. "Thank you, Admiral Hana," he said quietly. "Your attack just gave us enough energy to power our weapons." "For the next 6 months?" His weapons officer looked up from her controls. "Sir, all batteries are charged to maximum. We now have more power than we started with." "Excellent. Begin the demonstration. Show them what human engineering can accomplish." The human fleet opened fire, but these were not the simple plasma cannons and missiles that the Empire used. These were weapons that worked by changing the basic laws of physics in small areas of space. Gravitational torpedoes launched from the human ships and created tiny black holes that lasted for just a few seconds. Imperial vessels were stretched and twisted into impossible shapes. Before being crushed into balls of compressed metal, quantum disruptors fired beams that made the atomic bonds in enemy ship hulls simply stop working. Entire warships fell apart. As their metal turned back into individual atoms that drifted away like cosmic dust, temporal missiles moved backward through time to hit Imperial ships before they were even fired. From the Empire's point of view, their vessels simply exploded for no reason, and only afterward did sensors detect the weapons that had destroyed them. Captain Yoon, commanding the supercruiser Domination, watched 3 of his escort ships vanish. In flashes of impossible light, "Return fire," he ordered. "All weapons maximum power." His ship's main cannon fired a plasma beam powerful enough to cut through a moon. The beam struck a human vessel directly, and passed right through it like it was made of smoke. "What happened?" Yoon demanded. "Sir," his science officer said in a terrified voice, "that ship is not completely in our dimension. Our weapons cannot hit something that only partially exists. In normal space, the human ship that had been missed fired back. A wave of twisted space-time hit the Domination and turned its 5-kilometer hull inside out." Captain Yoon had just enough time to realize what was happening before his ship folded in on itself like origami. Admiral Hana watched her fleet being destroyed by weapons that should not exist. In 10 minutes she had lost 50 ships. The humans had not taken a single casualty. "All ships retreat to defensive positions," she ordered. "Form up around the world ender." But the human ships could move in ways that made retreat impossible. They appeared behind fleeing Imperial vessels and destroyed them before they could even turn around. They phased through solid matter to attack from inside enemy formations. Some seemed to be in multiple places at once, fighting several battles simultaneously. The super dreadnought world Ender was the Empire's greatest achievement in military engineering. It had shields that could stop planets from exploding and weapons that could crack moons in half. Admiral Hana had hoped it would be powerful enough to fight the human fleet. She was wrong. 3 human ships approached the world Ender from different angles. The massive warship's defensive systems engaged, filling space with laser fire and missile clouds. But the human vessels moved through the defensive fire like dancers, untouched by weapons that should have destroyed them instantly. "Impossible," whispered Captain Taiho. "They are moving faster than light, but without using warp drives? How are they doing that?" The first human ship fired a single shot at the world ender. It was not a big explosion or a bright beam of energy. It was just a small pulse of something that looked like bent space. The pulse hit the world ender's forward section and kept going, passing through 5 kilometers of armored hull like it was empty air. When it emerged from the rear of the ship, it had somehow taken all the energy from the dreadnought's power systems with it. The lights went out across the massive warship. Gravity failed, life support stopped working. In seconds, the most powerful vessel in the Imperial fleet became a dead hulk drifting in space. "Abandon ship," Admiral Hana ordered. All hands to escape pods. But the human ships were not finished with their demonstration. The second vessel fired what looked like a simple laser beam at the powerless dreadnought. Where the beam touched the hull, the metal began to change. It spread like a virus, turning solid steel into something that looked like crystal within minutes. The entire world ender had been transformed into a giant sculpture made of some unknown material that sparkled with its own inner light. "My God," breathed Captain Taiho as their escape pod drifted away from the crystallized remains of their flagship. "They turned our ship into art." The third human vessel approached the crystal sculpture that had once been the world ender. It extended some kind of beam that lifted the 5-kilometer crystal structure and gently moved it to a new position. Arranging it like a piece in a museum display, Admiral Hana realized that the humans were not just destroying the Imperial fleet. They were doing it in ways that showed off their incredible technology. Each attack was more impossible than the last, as if they were trying to prove how advanced they had become. "Admiral," her communications officer said from his station in the escape pod, "we are receiving a transmission from the human fleet." Captain Sung's face appeared on their small emergency screen. "Admiral Hana, I hope you are beginning to understand the situation. Your empire has been using the same basic technology for 300 years. In that time, you have grown comfortable and lazy. What do you want?" Hana asked. "We want justice," Sung replied. "Your empire has committed crimes against dozens of species. You have enslaved entire worlds, destroyed civilizations, and murdered billions of innocent people. Did you think there would never be consequences?" "We were bringing order to the galaxy," Hana said weakly. "You were bringing death and slavery," Sung corrected. "But that ends today." On the tactical display, Admiral Hana could see that most of her fleet was gone. Less than 50 Imperial ships remained, and they were scattered and running in panic. "How is this possible?" she asked. 40 years ago, humans had barely learned to leave their planet. How did you advance so quickly?" Captain Sung smiled. "We had help. When your scouts first visited Earth, they were not as careful as they thought. We found pieces of their technology after they left. We studied those pieces and learned how to build our own. That is impossible. Our technology is far too advanced for primitives to understand." "You underestimated us," Sung said. "That was your mistake. While you thought we were still playing with rockets, we were exploring dead worlds and finding ancient alien technology. We learned from civilizations that were building starships before your empire even existed." Admiral Hana felt a chill of understanding the lost worlds. The archaeological sites your empire never bothered to investigate. Exactly. You were so busy conquering living worlds that you ignored the dead ones, but we found them, we learned from them. And we used that knowledge to build weapons that could stop your empire. The human fleet began to spread out across the battlefield, systematically hunting down the remaining Imperial ships, but they were not killing everyone. Some ships were allowed to escape, their crews alive but their vessels crippled. "Why are you letting some of us live?" Hana asked. "Because we need witnesses," Sung replied. "We need people to return to Imperial space and tell everyone what happened here. We need the galaxy to know that the age of Imperial expansion is over." A new alarm sounded in Admiral Hana's escape pod. Her sensor officer looked up with wide eyes. "Admiral, long-range sensors are detecting more human ships. Dozens of them, all across the galaxy. They are appearing near major Imperial worlds." Captain Sung nodded. "You are correct. This was never about one ship or one battle, Admiral. This was about showing the entire galaxy that humanity is ready to take its place among the stars." "You are starting a war that will destroy everything," Hana said. "No," Sung replied calmly. "We are ending a war that your empire started 300 years ago. The difference is that this time the victims can fight back." The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Hana floating in her escape pod among the wreckage of the most powerful fleet in Imperial history. Around her, the human ships continued their work, demonstrating technologies that made Imperial science look like ancient Cave paintings. She realized that the galaxy was about to change forever, and there was nothing the Empire could do to stop it. Captain Sung stood on the bridge of the Retribution and watched the last Imperial ships flee into warp space. Around him, the debris of Battlefleet Omega drifted in the darkness, a graveyard of Imperial ambition. "Communications," he said to his officer, "open a channel to all frequencies. I want this message to reach every corner of Imperial space." "A channel open, sir," the officer replied. "You are broadcasting to the entire galaxy." Sung looked at the main screen, knowing that millions of beings across hundreds of worlds would hear his words. This was the moment humanity had been preparing for since the day Imperial scouts first visited Earth. "Citizens of the galaxy," he began, his voice calm but carrying the weight of absolute authority. "I am Captain Sung of the Human Expeditionary Fleet. For 300 years, the Krellian Empire has ruled through fear, conquest, and slavery. Today, that rule ends." On the Imperial capital world, Emperor Neon sat in his throne room watching the transmission with growing horror. Around him, his advisors whispered nervously among themselves. "The Empire has told you that humans are primitive and weak," Sung continued. "They told you this because they wanted you to believe that resistance was impossible. They were wrong." The transmission showed images of the battle that had just ended. Imperial viewers watched their most powerful fleet being destroyed by weapons that seemed to work like magic. "For 40 years we have been watching your empire. We have seen the slave worlds where millions suffer in chains. We have seen the destroyed civilizations, the burned planets, the genocide committed in the name of imperial expansion. We have counted every crime, remembered every victim." Emperor Neon stood up from his throne, his face red with rage. "Cut the transmission," he ordered. "We cannot, Your Majesty," his communications minister replied. "They are overriding all our systems. The signal is too strong to block." "Your empire believes that might makes right?" Sung's voice continued. "You believe that advanced technology gives you the right to enslave others. But what happens when you meet someone with better technology?" The images on the screen showed human ships appearing near major Imperial worlds. Not attacking, just appearing. A silent demonstration of power that made every Imperial citizen realize their military could not protect them. "We could destroy your worlds as easily as you destroyed others," Sung said. "We could turn your planets into glass, your cities into dust. But we are not you. We do not make war on innocent people." In the Imperial military headquarters, General Wanho watched the transmission with his staff officers. Reports were flooding in from across the Empire, human ships appearing everywhere, always in positions where they could not be stopped. "How many ships do they have?" one officer asked. "Unknown," Wanho replied grimly. "But apparently enough to threaten every major world in the Empire simultaneously." The transmission continued. "However, those who have committed crimes against other species will be held accountable. Those who have ordered the destruction of worlds, the enslavement of peoples, the murder of innocents, they will face justice." A list appeared on the screen. Names and faces of imperial officials, military commanders, and governors. Emperor Neon's face was at the top of the list. "These individuals are hereby charged with crimes against sentient life," Sung announced. "They will surrender themselves for trial, or they will be taken by force. This is madness." Emperor Neon shouted at the screen. "You cannot judge an empire. We have ruled this galaxy for 3 centuries. As if hearing him, Captain Sung smiled slightly. "To those who think their power protects them, let me demonstrate how wrong you are." The screen showed a view of the Imperial capital's orbital defense. Platforms, massive weapon stations that protected the throne world from any possible attack. These stations had enough firepower to destroy entire fleets. As the galaxy watched, human ships materialized next to each defense platform. Not close to them, inside them. The human vessels had somehow appeared within the solid metal structures of the orbital stations. The platforms simply fell apart as the human ships expanded to full size within their hulls. In seconds, the most powerful defensive system in the galaxy became floating scrap metal. Impossible, whispered General Wanho. Those ships materialized inside solid matter. That should kill everyone aboard. But the human ships were undamaged. They had somehow occupied the same space as the defense platforms and then displaced the Imperial technology when they returned to normal size. Emperor Nian felt true fear for the first time in his life. If the humans could appear inside defensive structures, no place in the Empire was safe. Your leaders have one standard day to consider their response, Captain Sung announced. After that, we will begin liberating the worlds your empire has enslaved. We will free every species you have conquered, return every stolen planet to its rightful owners, and ensure that imperial tyranny never threatens the galaxy again. The transmission ended, leaving the Empire in stunned silence on a slave world. Called Gamma 7, millions of alien prisoners looked up at the sky with hope for the first time in decades. The human message had reached them too, and they knew that rescue was finally coming. On the imperial capital, Emperor Nian called an emergency meeting of his High Council. The throne room was filled with the most powerful people in the Empire, but they all looked like frightened children. What are our options? The Emperor asked. Limited, General Wanho admitted. Our best fleet is destroyed. The enemy has ships at every major world. They have technology we cannot match. There must be something we can do. Admiral Hannah's voice came over the communication system from her rescue ship. Your Majesty, I have seen their weapons. I have watched them destroy our most powerful vessels like they were toys. We cannot win a military victory against them. Then what do you suggest? The Emperor demanded. In negotiation, Hannah replied, we must try to find terms that will prevent the total destruction of the Empire. Never! Nian slammed his fist on the arm of his throne. The Empire does not negotiate with primitives. Your Majesty, his science advisor spoke up nervously. According to our analysis of the battle recordings, the humans are not primitives. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. They appear to have mastered dimensional manipulation, temporal mechanics, and matter conversion on a scale we thought impossible. How could they advance so quickly? The science advisor hesitated before answering. We believe they found ancient technology on dead worlds that we never explored. Ruins from civilizations that existed before the Empire. They may have learned from species that were far more advanced than we are. Emperor Nian felt the weight of his mistake crushing down on him. The Empire had always focused on conquering living worlds with resources and populations to enslave. They had ignored the dead worlds, thinking they held nothing of value. Sire, his intelligence minister said, we are receiving reports from across the Empire. Slave populations on dozens of worlds are beginning to revolt. They know the humans are coming to free them. Send troops to suppress the revolts. We have tried, Your Majesty. But human ships appear wherever we send military forces. They are protecting the rebels. On his flagship, Captain Sung received reports from human vessels throughout the galaxy. The liberation had begun exactly as planned. Sir, his communications officer said, Captain Jin reports that the slave mines on Vega 3 have been liberated. The Imperial garrison surrendered without a fight. Excellent. What about Captain Minho's mission? The UES liberation has freed the prison world of Delta Prime, over 2 million. Political prisoners are being evacuated to safe worlds. Sung nodded with satisfaction. For 40 years, humanity had planned this moment. They had identified every slave world, every prison planet, every place where the Empire committed its crimes. Now they were systematically undoing centuries of imperial oppression. Sir, his science officer said, we are detecting massive energy buildups on the Imperial capital world. It looks like they are trying to power up some kind of super weapon. Sung was not surprised. Desperate empires always tried to use their most powerful weapons when they were losing. What type of weapon? He asked. Planet killer, sir. Looks like they are planning to destroy one of their own slave worlds as a demonstration. Which world? Kepler 4, sir. Population 8 billion, mostly alien slaves working in the factories. Sung's expression hardened. Even when facing defeat, the Empire was willing to murder billions of innocent people just to make a point. Send the retribution to Kepler-4, he ordered. Full speed, and transmit a message to the Imperial capital. Minutes later, Emperor Neon received Captain Sung's response to his plan. Your Majesty, Sung's voice was cold with anger, we know about your planet-killer weapon. If you fire it at Kepler-4 or any other world, we will consider it an act of genocide. The consequences will be severe. You cannot stop us. The Emperor replied, Our weapon is too powerful, and your ships are too far away, are they? Sung asked. On the screens throughout the Imperial capital, a new image appeared. The retribution was hanging in space directly above the planet-killer weapon, a massive orbital station that had taken decades to build. How did you get there so fast? Emperor Neon whispered. We have been there all along, Sung replied. Watching, waiting, we knew you would try something like this. 6 months had passed since the retribution first appeared in Imperial space. The galaxy was a very different place now. Admiral Sung stood on the observation deck of his flagship, looking down at what had once been the most powerful planet in the Empire. The Imperial capital world was still beautiful, with its golden cities and crystal towers, but the symbols of Imperial power were gone. No more slave ships in orbit, no more military parades in the streets, no more fear. Sir, Captain. Minji approached him with a datapad. The liberation of the Tau sector is complete. That makes 47 star systems freed from Imperial control. Sung nodded as he reviewed the numbers. 47 star systems, over 200 worlds. Billions of people who are now free to choose their own governments and make their own laws. Any resistance from Imperial forces? He asked. Very little, sir. Most Imperial commanders surrender as soon as our ships appear. Word has spread about what happened to Battle Fleet Omega. It was true. The story of how one human fleet had destroyed the Empire's greatest military force had traveled to every corner of the galaxy. Imperial soldiers knew that fighting the humans meant certain death, while surrender meant fair treatment and often a chance to join the liberation effort. What about the slave worlds? All primary slave colonies have been liberated, Minji reported. Captain Jin's task force finished evacuating the mining worlds in the Centauri system yesterday. Captain Minho is overseeing the rebuilding efforts on the factory worlds. Sung smiled slightly. The hardest part of the liberation had not been defeating Imperial forces. It had been helping the freed slaves learn how to live as free people. Many had been in chains for generations and did not know how to make decisions for themselves. The medical teams report that most of the freed prisoners are responding well to treatment, Minji continued. Dr. Hai says that with proper care, even the most damaged individuals can recover. Good. What about the war crimes trials? They begin next week, sir. We have over 3,000 Imperial officials in custody, including most of the High Command. But not all of them. Emperor Neon had managed to escape during the chaos of the Imperial collapse. Intelligence reports suggested he was hiding somewhere in the Outer Rim, trying to gather the scattered remains of his forces. Sung was not worried. The Emperor could run, but he could not hide forever. And even if he managed to avoid capture, his empire was finished. The human fleet had made sure of that. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. Admiral, his communications officer said, we have a message from Captain Do-Yun aboard the UES Redemption. Put him through. Captain Do-Yun's face appeared on the screen. He was a young man who had been promoted quickly during the liberation campaign. His ship was one of the newest human vessels, built with technology learned from studying captured Imperial equipment. Admiral, Do-Yun said, we have completed the humanitarian mission to the Vega system. The refugee camps have been cleared, and all former slaves have been relocated to safe worlds where they can start new lives. Excellent work, Captain. Any problems? Only one, sir. Some of the alien species want to join our fleet. They say they want to help us hunt down the remaining Imperial forces. This was not unusual. Many species that had suffered under imperial rule wanted revenge against their former oppressors. But Sung had given strict orders about this. "Tell them we appreciate their offer," he said, "but the Human Federation fights its own battles. We will provide them with ships and weapons to defend their worlds, but we will not turn them into soldiers for our cause." "Yes, sir, they understand, but they are not happy about it." Sung could not blame them for wanting revenge. The imperial crimes had been terrible, and the victims deserved justice. But turning the former slaves into an army of vengeance would make humanity no better than the empire it had defeated. "Anything else to report, Captain?" "Yes, sir. We found something interesting in the Imperial archives on Vega Prime, records that show the Empire knew about human space travel capabilities 40 years ago." Sung raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "The Imperial scouts who first visited Earth filed detailed reports about human technology. They noted that we had theoretical knowledge far beyond our practical capabilities. They recommended continued monitoring." "But their superiors ignored the recommendations?" "Worse than that, sir. The reports were classified and buried. Someone in the Imperial command structure decided that humans were not worth watching." Sung was not surprised. The Empire had grown arrogant over the centuries. They had conquered so many worlds and defeated so many enemies that they believed nothing could challenge them. "Forward those records to our intelligence division," Sung ordered. "They might contain useful information about other species the Empire underestimated." The communication ended, and Sung returned to looking out at the former imperial capital. In the distance, he could see construction crews working to tear down the monuments to imperial conquest. They would be replaced with memorials to the victims of imperial oppression. "Sir," Minji said, "Admiral Hana is here to see you." Sung turned in surprise. He had not expected this visit. Admiral Hana entered the observation deck, but she was no longer wearing an imperial uniform. Instead, she wore the simple gray clothing of a war crimes defendant. She was not in chains. The humans did not believe in treating prisoners badly, but she was clearly under guard. "Admiral Sung," she said, offering a slight bow. "Thank you for agreeing to see me. What do you want, Hana?" "To talk. To try to understand what happens next." Sung gestured to a chair, and they both sat down. Hana looked older than she had 6 months ago. The fall of the Empire had aged everyone who had served it. "The trials begin soon," she said. "I know I will be found guilty. I helped the Empire conquer 12 star systems. I ordered attacks that killed millions of people." "Yes, you did. I want you to know that I am not asking for mercy. I deserve whatever punishment your courts decide. But I want to understand something." "What? Why? Why did you spare so many of us? After the Battle of Arcturus, you could have killed every Imperial officer. Instead, you took prisoners and promised fair trials. Why?" Sung was quiet for a moment before answering. "Because that is what makes us different from the Empire. You ruled through fear and cruelty. We choose to rule through justice and mercy." "Rule?" Hana looked at him sharply. "Is that what this is? Are humans building a new empire to replace the old one?" "No," Sung said firmly. "Humanity has no desire to rule other species. We freed the enslaved world so they could govern themselves, not so we could control them." "Then what is your plan for the galaxy?" Sung stood up and walked back to the window. "We plan to go home, Admiral. Once the last Imperial War criminals are captured and tried, once the last slave world is freed, the human fleet will return to human space." Hana was shocked. "You are not going to establish your own government over the conquered territories?" "Those territories do not belong to us. They belong to the people who live on them. Our job was to free them, not to replace their imperial masters with human ones. But without some kind of central authority, the galaxy will fall into chaos. Pirates, warlords, civil wars." Perhaps," Sung admitted. "But that is their choice to make. Freedom includes the freedom to make mistakes." Hana stared at him in amazement. "I do not understand you humans." You have the power to rule the entire galaxy and you are choosing to give it up? Power is not something to be hoarded, Admiral. It is something to be used responsibly and then given away when the job is done. They sat in silence for several minutes, watching the construction crews work below. There is something else I wanted to tell you, Hannah said finally. Something you should know about the Emperor. What about him? Before he fled the capital, he activated something called the Final Protocol. I do not know what it is, but it was classified at the highest levels. Even I never saw the files. Sung felt a chill of concern. A desperate ruler with access to secret weapons was always dangerous. Do you have any idea what this protocol might involve? No, but I know it was connected to the archaeological sites in the dead systems. The ones your people used to learn. Advanced technology. You mean the Empire found ancient technology too? Yes, but they never tried to understand it. They just stored it in secret vaults, thinking it might be useful someday. Sung realized that the war might not be over after. Oh. If Emperor Nian had access to ancient alien weapons, he could still be a threat to the newly freed worlds. Thank you for telling me this, he said. The information could save many lives. Hannah nodded. It is the least I can do. I served the Empire for 30 years, but I can see now that we were the villains in this story. Maybe helping you stop the Emperor will balance the scales a little. She stood to leave, then paused at the door. Admiral Sung, when this is all over, when the trials are finished and the Emperor is captured, what will happen to people like me? The Imperial officers who are found guilty but not sentenced to death? Sung considered the question carefully. That will be up to the courts and the people you wronged. But I suspect many of you will be given a chance to make amends. To spend your remaining years helping to rebuild what the Empire destroyed. A chance at redemption? Everyone deserves a second chance, Admiral, even former enemies. After Hannah left, Sung remained on the observation deck,